So here's the overview I want you to pay attention to. So basically, you put your basically the name of the withholding agent. So you have to put your EIN, and of course you have to if this is an amended return, you have to specify that here. So when we talk about 1042, we're basically talking about the annual withholding tax return for U.S. person, income of foreign persons. And so you put the address, the first name, last name, you put the address, you have to put the city, the zip, and everything, the state, of course. So here we are basically in section 1, you have to provide a record of basically, you can see on the screen here, it's a record of federal tax liability. So we put for every month, all the like the 7th, the 15th, the 22nd, the 31st. So this is pretty detailed, and the IRS loves this sort of granularity. So you have to include your federal tax liability. This is very important. This is about your federal tax liability here. And next, I want to show you on the screen the next section here is that you can see here that we put chapter 3. Why am I showing you this? This is because if you go back to the previous form here, where it says if you go through your form, you have the ability to specify certain documents here. And so we talk about chapter 3. I don't know if you see underneath the Awesome Sweetie Kiwi Show, the name of the withholding agent. We have chapter 3, and then we have chapter 4. So chapter 3, we have status code 101, and chapter 4, status code 14. Remember that, 1 and 14. Now let's go back to the second screenshot here. So second screenshot, you have chapter 3 first, and chapter 4. So chapter 3, it was a 01. So here we are speaking about an effectively connected income. And chapter 4, we have here the 14. So this is effectively connected income. So you are trying to tell the IRS that the income that you are reporting here is basically effectively connected. Okay, this is really important because the IRS wants to make sure that the income applies to U.S. sources before you actually go into further calculations. So one thing I want to remember here is that if we go back to the first screenshot, you will see that for every month from January all the way through December, there are separate dates, four times a week. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. You are going to enjoy today's conversation. Moving on here on line 61, you put number of forms that the 1042S filed. So here we put 10 and electronically 10 as well. So like manually 10 and electronically 10 as well. And you put on line 62A, the total amount, the total US US source FDAP income. And we put here $80,000. And so the total gross amounts reported here is $80,000 in our calculation. So you have a clear idea what I'm talking about. And so basically, if there is a third-party designee that you want to include in the conversation, you put his or her first name, last name, and also the phone number so the IRS can reach out to that person if need be. And then you have to put your signature, the date. You have to put the capacity in which you are acting. So, here we put company tax attorney. You have to put the date tab phone number so the IRS can contact you. And if there is a paid preparer actually in the equation also, you have to put that person's information so the IRS can contact them and put the address, first name, last name. Next here, actually on line 63, total tax reported as withheld or paid by withholding agent on all forms 1042S and 1000. We put 14,000. And C, adjustments, 1,000. C1, 1,000, C2, 2,000. And total tax reported as withheld or paid, $15,000, okay? And here, so remember that number. This is really important. And next, we have to put the computation of tax due or overpayment. So here at 64, you actually include your total, your adjustments to total net tax liability. And so you put the numbers that really go in and out. So the adjustments, if you will. So total next tax liability under chapter 3, chapter 4. If you remember earlier, I was just showing you chapter 3 and what chapter 4, what those two chapters actually apply to. And so you put the appropriate amount. And so all the way down, the bottom line here is that the line 68, that's what really matters. Line 68, I want you to look on the screen right now. So line 68 for us, it was $15,000. And this is your total payments for the year. So this is the amount that the IRS pays attention to. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Form 1042. One thing I want to say here is that the IRS wants in Section 2, you have to provide a reconciliation of payments of U.S. source FDAP income, and it's one of those things where on Section 2, line A, you put the total U.S. source FDAP income that is required to be withheld upon Chapter 4, so 64,000. Okay. And so the amount that you actually paid is 64,000. So everything actually comes to when we talk about the total U.S. source FDAP income reportable under Chapter 4. Here I'm speaking about line 3 in Section 2. We have 64,000, and line 4 is 80,000. So you can see that the total variance here actually amounted to 16,000. And so this is one of those things where you have to explain. Remember that line 5 wants you to really explain. Line 6 wants you to explain. So here we put the variance is due to timing, as the company operates on a fiscal year other than January through December. Also, the company is a subsidiary of a parent company whose deferred tax assets and liabilities get reconciled when the parent company files its corporate income taxes, whether the parent company is filing Form 1120S or 1120C, or even 1065 for that matter. So the bottom line here is that you have to actually provide an explanation that makes sense. Okay, and so be very clear, because the IRS reads this explanation a lot. They just want to make sure that you are actually providing some kind of logical explanation. If not, they will reject everything. They will reject your Form 1042, and this is actually this triggers penalties and interest for you, because you will be late, or even worse, you have not filed taxes at all. Okay, and Section 3 and Section 4 of Form 1042, as you can see on the screen, they relate to Section 871M transaction, and also they relate to QDD. But we're not going into too much details here. If you have any questions, if you're listening to me right now, and some of those items do actually that I have skipped, they do apply to your specific situation, let us know in the comment section, and we'll answer you and be more granular then. So let me give you the approach you need to really pay attention to here. So when we talk about Form 1042S, what is it really? It is actually basically, it really reports to for Form 1042S, it's one of those things where you want to have information returned files by the withholding agent to report the amounts paid to foreign persons as described under the amounts subject to reporting on Form 1040. So Form 1042S applies even filers didn't withhold any income tax. And it's actually a required document for reporting money paid to foreign persons or those presumed to be foreign by a US-based business or institution. And it's one of those things where you want to be clear. Now, the IRS says if you file Form 1042S, you must also file Form 1042, annual withholding tax return for US source income of foreign persons. And who actually uses it? Well, non-US citizens or non-US groups, including foreign partnerships, corporations, estates, or trust, use Form 1042 to report any US-based income they have received to be accurately taxed on that income, according to US standards. So in cases where a tax treaty or other exception to taxation exists, the IRS will still require Form 1042 to be completed. So it's one of those things where you have to understand that the agency changes its requirements all the time. And so a withholding agent uses Form 1042 to report US source scholarships and fellowships grants received by foreign students. Form 1042 also applies to dividends from US companies, deposit account interest. You have pensions, for example. You have royalties. You have real estate income. You have insurance premiums. This is really good. You have compensation from services performed in the US. And you also have gambling winnings. And effectively connected income, ECI, and notional principal contract income. So bottom line here is you have a constellation of income sources that you have to really include. And so when we talk about compensation from services conducted in the US, This includes compensation for independent personal services performed in the U.S. and compensation for dependent personal services performed in the U.S., but only if that beneficial owner is claiming tax benefits. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Form 1042. What is it and how do you actually file it? The thing is, when we talk about Form 1042, it's really important to understand that Form 1042 is not used to report wages for income tax purposes, okay? Instead, Form W-2 should actually be used. So, however, if earnings are exempt from income tax withholding because of a tax treaty between the earner's home country and the United States, that provides the treaty benefits. So this is then Form 1042 can be used. This is to only report wages in excess of the amounts that exempt from income tax withholding, okay? So this is kind of important. Now, let me give you an example. Take the treaty between Morocco, for instance, and the United States. Now, Moroccans who work as independent contractors in the U.S. are exempt from taxation up to $5,000 in total income. This is only under certain guidelines, and it's really a little different. Let me give you a further example here. If a Moroccan earns $72.50 in taxes, in income, and he or she will receive a W-2 showing $22.50 in gross income and a 1042-S reporting $5,000. Although Morocco and the United States have a tax treaty, both IRS forms need to be filed anyway, okay? So now, what else do you need to know about filing that form? It's important to understand that you are able to, the withholding agent could be an employer, a business, a university, or other institution, okay? And so basically, the Form 1042 must be filed with the IRS, and a copy should also be sent to the business, students, entity, or employee payee to complete their U.S. federal tax return, because they have a responsibility too, okay? So it's one of those things where you have to understand what really works for you. And so what is actually the difference between Form 1040 and 1042 and Form 1042-S? So Form 1042 actually is used to report tax withheld on the income of foreign persons. And therefore, Form 1042 is actually concerned with how much income will be withheld for tax purposes, and Form 1042-S is only concerned with payments made to foreign persons. A withholding agent only needs to file a Form 1042 with the IRS, not with the employee. In addition, Form 1042 can be filed by itself, while Form 1042-S must always be filed together with the Form 1042. So when we talk about due dates, what is really happening here with Form 1042? Now, only one Form 1042-S should be filed per calendar year. Copy A is due to the IRS and copies B, C, and D to the recipients on March 15th of the year after the relevant payment was made. So with the withholding agent filing the 1042-S information returns keeps copy E for their records. So if you need more time to file Form 1042-S, for instance, the IRS will grant you an extension, not a problem, you just gotta ask, okay? And to gain more time, you'll need to file Form 8809, application for extension of time to file information returns by the due date, or Form 1042-S. Keep in mind that there is no extension for the payment of tax. So there are consequences for non-action. So failure to file a 1042-S on time without an extension or not paying any tax due could result in interest and penalties from Uncle Sam. It's one of those things where you have to have a clear idea how you stand. And it's one of those things where, again, you have to see exactly what really applies to your situation, and then make sure that you are in compliance. Now, everything I'm telling you here, if you have any question, you listen to me and it sounds a little confusing to you, or it's not really clear to you, you have a question based on your specific situation, please let us know in the comment section, so we can actually be more granular. The thing is that when I speak things here, I'm giving here a general or generic advice, if you will. I mean, it's pretty solid advice because we're basing this on several years of research, so it's pretty solid advice. IRS, but your situation might be a little different. So you want to contact, you want to put your info there so that one of our team members will get back to you, will ask you questions, and then so we know exactly what your situation is before providing guidance. And one thing I also want to say here is that when we talk about Form 1042, this is actually at the federal level. There could be a situation where you also have to file form like an equivalent of Form 1042 at the state level. Make sure that you comply with your state tax obligations as well as your federal tax obligations. This is really important. How do you actually file, how do you fill out Form 1042? Basically, everything revolves around certain amounts of information. For instance, you have an income code, okay, gross income. So gross income actually comes from a lot of sources though. I mean, it's not just one source. You have chapter indicators. So basically it's one of those things where you have to fill out the chapter that really applies to you. If you remember, when we started to this conversation, I actually was showing you the form that applies to our specific situation. So I showed you Form 3 and Form 4, actually not form, but chapter 3 and chapter 4. So you have to include that. And so you have to include the country code. This is one of those things that are really important. Country code is really crucial. You also have to mention the status code in terms of the state income tax withheld, the payer's state tax number. You have to really understand that, and the name of the state, by the way. So the IRS, again, here wants to have a clear idea what the name of the state really is so they can reconcile their data internally. Now, it's one of those things where the IRS sends some data to the state, and the state actually sends data to the IRS. This is an electronic data interchange and process that really works fantastically. So basically what you want to do is you want to really understand if you like to add or subtract certain items to this particular Form 1042, you have to just make sure that you actually provide enough explanatory statement, or let's say enough evidence, so that the IRS understands exactly what's really happening. Because if you do not provide the evidence, you run the risk of having problems in terms of penalties, in terms of taxes, and so on and so forth. But if you provide benefits, if you provide some kind of explanation, then everything is fine in terms of making sure that you are not going to get into the same problem again. One thing I also need to understand here is that you need to understand that you are actually talking to, when we talk about Form 1042, you have all kinds of situations, and the IRS is tracking not only the amount you paid, but to whom, right? It's one of those things where, for instance, when we talk about withholding allowance, you have to really understand that the IRS is actually paying you, actually compensating you, if you will, for certain things. And it's one of those things where we're speaking about like a compensation for independent personal services, or dependent personal services, or compensation for teaching, compensation during study and training. So you have a constellation of processes that really apply to you in terms of making sure you are getting the job done and you are complying with your tax obligations. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. Let's quickly do a recap here. So today's conversation, I explained to you actually about Form 1042, and basically, I gave you some tips around the approach, and also around the taxes you need to apply to actually file your taxes a lot faster. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.